everybody. We've got 45 minutes to an hour to have this event, and we shan't waste a moment. So first, in the spirit of reconciliation, the Brain Science Network acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend their respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. So welcome everybody to what is our second webinar for our Outside the Bubble series. We're very excited to have you all here on what is becoming a repeat event, because if anything, what brain scientists in that EMCR range really want to talk about these days is what are our options, not just in the academic sphere or the university sector. And half the time the battle is just interacting with the right people to hear their stories. So this webinar event is about sharing people's individual stories so we can all learn about how they did what they did and take any important messages away with us. So the Brain Science Network, we're part of the Australian Brain Alliance. We're aligned with them with a core aim to establish a platform for brain scientists, EMCRs, to develop into future brain science leaders wherever they may be. So we're really grateful to have our speakers here today. So we'd like to welcome Dr. Sin-Kei Ning and Dr. Melita Giummarra. So thank you both for being here. And I'd like to also introduce you to the second chair, Dr. Matthew Thompson, who's going to take it from here to give you some bits of information before we get chatting. Thanks, Matt.
Brilliant. Yeah. So this entire session is a Q&A session, right? We won't have any formal section at the end for you guys asking your questions. So please, now and throughout, pop your question into the Q&A section of Zoom, and I'll curate those, handle those. There's no moderation there. Everything's going to come up. We get to see each other's questions. You can comment on those questions, and you can even upvote them. So please do that, and we'll take those in that order. And we'll also play around with questions that we have and see how it goes organically.
Okay, so to get started, we'd love to hear from our panel, our speakers, Sin-Kei and Melita. To start, we'd love to hear about what your current position is, and then a little bit of the backstory. So what you were doing when you were in university, and then how you transitioned into your current role. So I've got Sin-Kei on my left. Would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So I did, I guess my PhD started in 2015. I found my lovely supervisor, Bernie, to kind of take the lead with my project. I had a background in neuroscience and psychology. And I submitted in late 2019, decided to take a few months off, just in time for the pandemic to kind of really hit. So I was actually in a very unique position where a lot of my postdoc opportunities unfortunately fell through. And I, with nothing to do, I kind of had to really think about, what I wanted out of life, and is academic, is that where I want to be? Like, do I still want to be doing that kind of stuff? Just going through all the job ads that were out there, intelligence analyst kind of caught my eye. I never thought about working for law enforcement, but it sounds really cool. I obviously did do a bit more research into it, and kind of contacted some of the people, says, what does this job entail? Because I have no background experience. And they were really nice and kind of just gave me, a brief outline of what it involves. I really enjoyed it, and then applied for a few. So now I'm working as an intel analyst for Victoria Police. Yeah.
And Melita?
Hi, so my current role is, primary role, I still wear lots of hats, even though I'm outside the bubble, But my primary role is as the Acting Director of Research Programs at the National Disability Insurance Agency. So I left academia in November last year, and I've already in the last month had a promotion into that role. So that's a big difference to academic pathways, where you go on like very long kind of periods where you have to build up track and go for promotion and then maybe not even get it. Prior to that, I was working at Monash University as a research fellow from, what was it, 2011, when I finished my PhD, up until November last year. So I did my PhD in psychological sciences, overlapped with Bernie at one time, doing our PhDs together. And then I got an early career fellowship from the NHMRC for 4 years. And then because I got my early career fellowship straight out of my PhD, like within a few months of finishing my PhD, I was still eligible for the DECRA fellowship. So I then got a DECRA fellowship. So I've been on full fellowship track for the past 8-9 years. And then, yeah, at the end of last year, when I knew my DECRA fellowship was ending and all kind of untied funding that would have otherwise potentially allowed me to continue finishing off some projects and keeping building, just dried up and got sucked into other parts of the university. So I just thought, well, actually, I've kind of been not happy for a while with the academic way of life, with many aspects of the academic way of life. So I thought, time to get out, and started looking and applying. Yeah, similar to something, but it's just, I didn't see much hope staying in, unfortunately.
Can both of you elaborate a little bit more on that, around your thinking about it being time to go? So both of your situations were tied up with like Sinkha, your postdoc opportunities fell through. Melita, you kind of started to really reflect on what you wanted out of your career and whether or not you were happy at that kind of narrow end of funding. Can you guys walk us through a little bit around that thinking about how you knew it was time to go, or that you wanted to?
For me, it was in part that the previous year I'd gone for an NHMRC fellowship. Having had an NHMRC fellowship already, I was automatically in the EL2 category. And even though I had what I thought was a pretty good track record at the time, I did really, really poorly. And I didn't even rank in the top kind of quartile of it. Like and the main, as many people who've gone for these fellowships find, the main feedback, even though I think I had about 70, 75 papers at, less than 10 years out of my PhD, some of the main feedback I got was, I'd expect more publications for her, at her age or at her career stage. I'm like, how many more can I do than like 10 a year? And I just thought, well, the system's broken and I hate applying for funding. It just seems like such a waste of money waste of time when there's just dwindling amounts of it and success rates are going down. And I thought, that's not how I want to spend my time. I'd rather just be doing really good research or just be making a difference. And that was actually one of the bigger things for me. Just went, I'm done with that. I mean, there were lots of other things I was done with as well, I guess, that sometimes it's not as collaborative as you would actually like it to be. So you can feel a bit isolated at times, or like you're just kind of powering along, doing as much as you can. The fact that it creeps into every aspect of your life, or there's always more you can be doing. So you're always working overtime, you're always doing a bit on the weekend. And I thought I needed to just step back from all of that and get some work-life balance. And actually kind of, when I started applying for jobs, it made me reflect on, what do I want? Where do my values lie? What do I even want to make a difference with in this world? Is it getting more publications because that's what the fellowship reviewers said I should do? Or is it making a difference and using my skills for good? And that's where I laid. That you see,
Yeah, for me, it was a really hard decision because I guess I was still pretty, like I just finished my PhD, and I really love research. I kind of still hold on to the fact that maybe one day I'll go back. I haven't like completely closed the door on that, but I did talk to a lot of people senior to me, including my supervisors, about like, what does this life kind of look like? And, you know, similar to you, like, does it align with what I want to do with my life and spend my time and things like that? But I also talked to a lot of people, you know, outside, or people who knew people who got jobs in the industry and things like that. Actually, a friend of mine actually said that 100% of the people who have left academia has not regretted it. So I was interested, like, as in, like, I mean, I know I'm talking to a bunch of academics, so, you know, maybe it's the wrong audience, but yeah, like I think I needed a little bit of a break from that kind of lifestyle. And, you know, with my current job, I work shift work and I work weekends, but like I do get paid for them. And I was like, that's great. You know, like, yeah. So, I guess I still really love research. I would love to, you know, look for opportunities, whether it's in university or in collaboration or things like that. I feel like working in government, there is opportunity for that. It's just a different avenue. That's all.
So speaking of that, Suke, what does your job look like day to day? Outside of this bubble, what does it look like? Absolutely. And how is it a bit different to inside the academic bubble?
So I'm an Intel analyst. There are very different types. Mine is more focused on real-time monitoring. So we help a lot of members on the front line. So particularly when they're responding to 000 calls, we kind of get those jobs that come through and say, oh, someone's, you know, walking down the street with a knife. He looks really agitated. We can, you know, we're behind computers, obviously, so we can kind of use resources that the members on the front line may not necessarily have. I also work with a senior sergeant behind me, so they're usually pretty good at saying, like, oh, we need to know about, you know, like, has he got a previous history of something, or, you know, X, Y, and Z. And yeah, so because it's real-time monitoring, my job is very much like, when I'm at work, but when I'm at home, I completely switch off, which was one of the things that were really appealing to me. And like Melita said before, having to answer emails after hours and weekends, and next minute it's been 2 hours and you're still responding to emails. And that was what I kind of wanted to step away from a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of as much as I can really say.
Yeah, understood.
It's worth noting that Cinque can't talk into details about her role, which is exciting and glamorous.
It's not that exciting.
Sorry, Matthew, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, sorry. Yeah, what about you, Melita?
Yeah, I was going to say similarly, like when we work in government, we often have there are always sensitivities around some of the work that we do. Particularly when you work for an organisation like NDIS and NDIA, that you see all of the drama that happens out there on social media. When it gets picked up by journalists and misconstrued, we do have to be careful to represent our work fairly and not speak out of turn. But yeah, my day-to-day work, I actually came into the research and evaluation branch at the NDIA into the evidence synthesis team. So we do systematic reviews in that team. I should also say that the research and evaluation branch that I joined, it's only really been around for 18 months. So it's a fairly new part of the agency, and it was set up really well by a lot of academic researchers. So it's got really good kind of academic principles that we hold ourselves to. We do all of our work pretty rigorously. So yeah, I came in to do work on quite a big systematic review that ended up being an umbrella review that ended up being a mega umbrella review. And we did it really, really rigorously. With my new role, well, I'm still doing some of the work that I was doing from that team, because it doesn't just finish when you change roles, and it takes it does take a lot longer to refill positions sometimes in government, that it's a long procurement process. So if we're trying to meet deadlines, then we all still have to kind of pitch in. But in my new role as Director of Research Program, so I'm overseeing a team who are doing a lot of qualitative research, looking at exploring and understanding, different experiences or aspects of either accessing supports or home and living options for people with disability, what it means to get out and participate in the community, or, and what types of things help or hinder that, different things that we want to learn to be able to actually improve policy or guidance, or the way that different people throughout the disability sector are supporting people with disability to achieve their goals. I think it's a really nice time for me to have stepped into that role, because we sit within the policy grant, kind of part of the agency, and we're starting to work a lot more collaboratively. So it's just, that has been the biggest eye-opener coming into this type of setting, where I'm doing research, I'm doing quite academic research, but we've got this direct streamline through to who wants to use this information. And we know even before I finish a project, it's being picked up all over the place to actually go, oh, so this is really helpful in this part to improve certain aspects of the way that STEAM's operating, or there's actually soon they'll be writing a new piece of policy about a particular topic, so we can generate some evidence for them to actually to use that. So it's really, really rewarding in that way, that it's actually being used. Whereas working in the university sector, you're like, well, we know this is a knowledge gap, or it's something that we think is really interesting and important, but is anyone going to listen? Is anyone ever going to read it? Is this going to be useful? How do I demonstrate my impact in a HMRC fellowship application? But yeah.
Okay,
so we have a good question from Genevieve that flows quite well there. So I had a similar thought. So I tell my students that they're learning transferable skills that will stand them in good stead outside of academia, but really I have no experience, no direct experience. Do you think it's true that research students are learning transferable skills that will stand them in good stead? So Genevieve says, both of your roles sound very different to research and brain sciences. Which skills from your academic careers were most transferable to your industry roles?
Well, for me,
I'm UCK. All right,
sorry.
no, yeah, sorry. You go, Melita. You're started.
Melita.
You're right. You're in, Melita.
I was going to say, I'm probably a bit unusual for someone who's moved out of the bubble, but I'm still doing a lot of research, and it's still quite kind of similar to what you would do in that academic setting, except the timelines might be a bit different, and the communication strategies, the knowing who are your stakeholders, engaging people along the way, all of that sometimes a bit different. Although, to be honest, like a lot of the work that I was doing in the last few years was working with the TAC or with other kind of stakeholders anyway. That was something that I realised over the last particularly 5 years, that if you're going to do research that matters, that makes a difference, you need to engage as much as you can with who needs to use that information. It can help you to identify kind of barriers or blockages to actually communicating knowledge, or to to identifying solutions, to trialing a new intervention or a new strategy or something like that. If you're actually getting the viewpoints from stakeholders, that can help you a lot with your doing better research, more targeted research. So I think anyone who's working within the research setting can build those skills. You maybe need to be a bit more proactive about it, to sometimes set up those partnerships yourself, or to kind of approach people to say, hey, I think I'm doing some work that's really relevant to you guys. I'm interested in your input, that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm a bit unusual though, that I've transferred my skills from one setting to another setting where I use a lot of them directly, but I've massively upscaled the stakeholder engagement and communication pathways side of it.
I guess for me, the skills were like, I kind of had to think a little bit more laterally about that question, but it kind of reminds me of where I did my PhD in MRI analysis, and learning that program was almost going to be the death of me, because it was just something that I just, like, it was speaking a different language kind of thing, like learning how to use MATLAB and things like that. But in that process, I was able to pick up like advanced, programming skills that are very applicable to like the data sets that VicPol uses. So being able to pick up a new program like very easily, and also having thinking like that, every researcher has that very like systematic, like, this is my research problem, this is my methodology, and that step-by-step kind of thinking is actually, it kind of propels you in the field, because that's very similar to what intelligence is, that logical step, because you can't just pull something out of thin air. Their processes are very similar to research. So I've been able to kind of, use, what I know into something in a field that I'm not really familiar with, but really easy to kind of pick up. So, yeah.
That's great.
So, look, Genevieve's getting a lot of upvotes for one of the biggest questions in people that are working in universities, which is around job security. And if there's any conversation that, regularly happens, it's the dream of knowing that you have a job longer than 12 months, which when you're, I think, coming out of your PhD, you start to learn that your supervisors, your mentors, the people you look up with, most people these days, if they're research only, are generally focused on generally don't know if they have a job past Christmas. So it's a real big issue. Or when the fellowship's up, that's up for them. So the question from Genevieve here is, one of the issues you've both touched on is job security and how it is linked to successful grants. Do you have job security now? And are your positions tenured or are they fixed term? So Melita, do you want to go for that one?
Sure. So the position I came in on was a 6-month contract. So that was a little bit nerve-wracking, thinking, oh, is that going to last? But then I thought, if it's not, then I guess I'll springboard again. But within a few months, they'd already offered to extend it to the end of 2022. So I think it's fairly standard, though, that a lot of these positions, they can't guarantee ongoing employment. The other thing with working in federal government is that nearly all jobs are contractor. So I'm employed through an agency and work for the NDIA through that agency. You effectively have all of the same, I guess, you're treated as an employee. You have a lot of the same privileges of being a direct employee of the public service, and all of the same, I guess, requirements and values and everything that you're meant to live by in your work. But yeah, that was certainly nerve-wracking. The other, I guess, the downsides of working as a contractor is it's actually almost like being casual. So if I don't work a day, I don't get paid for that day. So your annual leave, your sick leave and everything is kind of effectively factored into your daily rate that you get paid. So that, again, it's not ideal as far as job security goes, but they are gradually trying to lobby more and more for us to transition to direct public service roles, which would be a lot, less stressful. But that said, like within a few months, I still do have like an honorary appointment at the university, and I am one day a week at in a health service at the Alfred Hospital doing a research role there. So I've got a little bit of other research kind of work going on, and I'm still finishing off projects and doing things from my academic kind of tail end of my academic work. But within a few months of starting in this role, so I'm really happy with what I'm doing, and I don't see myself moving away from it anytime soon. But at the same time, the fact that I've been able to make that transition and that I've been really happy doing it and learning new things and settling into this type of environment makes me realize, well, do you know what? You could pivot as many times as you want. I could go and get a job in another agency, or I could go get a job in state department, government, or I could go and actually, what's the big deal? Like, I don't need security in the one position for forever, because actually change is good. But that said, I'm very happy with what I'm doing and I don't want to move anytime soon. But just knowing that that's actually a silver lining, I guess, and something that you can have in the future just takes away that dread that you would have as an academic researcher. It's like, oh, how am I going to hang on? Yeah.
Okay.
My position is ongoing. So I've got this job until I want to leave, I guess. Very similar to Melita. Like, even if like this may not be the job that I'm going to do for 10 years, there's opportunities, and like that change is not as bad as I thought it was, like changing from academia to something completely different. I think a good thing about, Victoria Police, and I believe some other state government as well, is that you do have an opportunity to get seconded to different areas of the organisation as well as external organisations. So recently we had a member go to Department of Justice or like Department of Health and Human Services and things like that. So while you may not stay in this role, you are kind of well connected to kind of branch out somewhere else, which is, I think, a really good thing about government agencies, is that you can move around a bit if you want to.
Thanks both. So the next question up from Diana is how you navigate that conversation with university, mentors, collaborators with your decision to leave academia. Were there any particular challenges you faced with these? I'm worried Cinque might tell you all that I was encouraging her to finish off her PhD publication, so I'll just lead with that one. But yeah, so how do you, when you make that decision, or you're thinking about leading up to that decision, starting to have those conversations, it's tricky because it's almost, there's other things that happen in life, and if you flag things like this, people might go, oh well, she's not committed, or are we going to invite this person to this project if they're going to plan on leaving? Or how do you know when to start those conversations, and how did people take it and support, etc.? So Melita?
Sure. So I started those conversations, let's say when my contract finished in November. I've realised that the funding was gone in September. So I had a couple of months where I went, oh crap, what am I going to do? Do I want to slog it out and just see where else I can move sideways to? And I did have those conversations. So I thought, I'll keep an open mind. I was pretty sure I wanted to leave and try something outside of the university sector. And I thought, what great excuse to do it than a pandemic. And then, no one's going to scrutinise that too much, given how the universities were ravaged financially. So I did actually, I spoke to my main, mentor, supervisor. I spoke to others I collaborated with in quite a few different departments across the university to see what opportunities they might have in their groups, or what they thought would be good ideas. I also spoke to people who had left, who previously worked in our group and were in government jobs or other locations, just to see how they did it, whether they had advice on going in their directions. I prefer just an open book, honest policy myself, and I'm not very good at keeping secrets either. So if I try to keep secrets, then I'm going to slip up at some point anyway. I was pretty open with people and just told them honestly which way I was thinking of going. I guess the tricky thing for me is that I am still a primary supervisor of 2 PhD students and a co-supervisor of 1 external PhD student, and I'm trying to finish off a trial at Monash and run some projects through the pain clinic at Alfred Health. So there's a lot of moving parts still in my academic work. So I I had to actually be honest as well, though, with people who are involved with all of those projects to go, actually, yeah, my role is actually, I think, going to change significantly, and I'm not going to have as much time, but I will make time as I can, so that I'm not just letting things completely fizzle out. But it's, yeah, time management is a really big one while I'm still in this transition point. I'm trying to support PhD students particularly. I don't want to compromise them. And so I've always been open with them as well to go, look, this is changing. And if it ends up that it's not working, then we'll rearrange your supervision loads so that someone else is your primary supervisor. Yeah. Has that answered the question?
It does. Matt, I'll just get you to.
I missed what Bernadette said there, but I'm going to take over here on, I'm going to combine two questions, one from Lincoln and David. So from David, how did you deal with the emotional blow of realizing that you're closing the dream on academia? We all have aspirations of a long-lasting career. Sorry if this is triggering. Lincoln says, Melita, you had built up a reasonable academic career before deciding to leave. Were you concerned about having to start again from the bottom of the totem pole when moving outside academia? So yeah, I imagine it can be and difficult, emotional, all sorts of things might happen when you made that decision. How did you guys go?
I think, yeah, it was difficult to process. Like, I had finished my PhD and I thought I'd work up the ladder enough to, like, I'm a doctor now and I get to, like, do some more advanced things, but then to start again, like, maybe you're not as paid as much as you could have been, and you're going to be like the person that does all the crappy tasks and things like that because you're starting fresh. But you kind of just, for me, I think I just enjoyed the type of work that I was doing, so didn't mind so much. And working with a good team is also important to that they foster your growth in that. And the people that I work with also have worked with a couple of other PhDs before, so they kind of knew the background and stuff like that. So no one's really kind of, you're not really at the bottom of the food chain like a student as you were before, at least for me. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, so having, back-to-back fellowships, I was a really hard worker as an academic and fairly productive. And, I published a lot. I did get a few grants. I had a really nice wide network of collaborators. I'd supervised already 5 PhD students to completion and had kind of a few on the go at the time as well. But that said, like, well before the pandemic, I was already kind of not really happy for the year before that in my academic role. I was probably starting to burn out a bit. There's only so long you can maintain the stamina of just overworking constantly. And I think the first big clue that I was probably ready to go was just before the NHMRC fellowship outcomes were announced. When I found out I didn't get the fellowship, but just before they were announced, I was actually partly dreading it. Thinking, I don't know if I can do another 5 years. I don't know if I want to do I want this fellowship? I don't know if I actually want to stick at this same, research topic and keep plugging away, building. Like, I think I'm over it. And then, of course, I found out I didn't get it, and I was disappointed. But at the same time, like, oh, maybe that is the blessing I needed. As far as starting from scratch goes, though, I think so. The director who employed me first at the NDIA, so coming into the evidence synthesis team, she was also actually working part-time still at Monash University. So she understood research careers and research skills and research experience. And I'm actually really thankful for how she actually fought really hard to get me to say yes to the job. I actually declined it several times because it was actually a fairly entry-level position. And I thought, no, I'm not taking a step back. And so I said, no, I would want the income to be at a similar level to my level C academic position. And she's like, yep, fair enough. I'll see if I can get that to work for us. This is before, a contract's on the table, but she did fight really hard for that. And I was surprised it actually ended up working, because the agency's like, oh, often they can just pull you in for a promotion as soon as you're in. I'm like, no, I'm not going to wait on that kind of chance that they'll promote me once I've said yes. Like, where's the incentive on that? They just get you in and then they work you. But no, she fought really hard for that and came through. So I felt already at the outset that there was a recognition and an appreciation for my diverse skill set. And even though I was coming in to do systematic reviews, she really liked the fact that I'd worked on trials and I'd worked on other, big data linkage and epidemiological data and a whole lot of different methods and skills. So I think my research environment particularly also can, in my current role, that's actually really useful. And I think actually, the fact that I was able to then get a promotion was because I have all those other diverse skills as well. And the opportunity came up that the person who was in the role wanted to step back from it. So, it was actually not that wasn't my experience at all of having to start from the bottom.
I know it's difficult to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, but I'm not an NHMRC reviewer, but as far as I'm concerned, you were at the top of your academic game, right? These 75 papers, these grants, back-to-back fellowships. What do you say to people who might have similar feelings but might not have achieved those traditional measures? Do you think the skills that we may have, that we've learnt, would work in your position if we're not as excellent as you on paper?
Absolutely, yeah. Because most of that, like all those publications, it's a list. It's a list of words I've written, and that's a journal decided was in the end okay to publish. Like, it shows that I'm able to complete projects. It shows that I can put my ideas together. But my colleagues all have very different, most of us do have academic backgrounds, but they've all got very different track records. Some might only have a few publications. Some, the previous director in whose position I stepped into, like I've now got 87 papers and she has in her 30s. So, it's more about how you use your skills, how you communicate. Communication is key, how you keep your ideas together, how you share them with others, how you keep track of different moving parts. And so all of those things, it doesn't matter if you're a public health researcher, brain researcher, we all those are the transferable skills that you do build and you can demonstrate. And I think it's more about if you're applying for work outside of the bubble, they don't care about how many papers you've got. They care about what that means or what that shows. So you say, I am able to complete projects, work collaboratively with others, draw in insights from other experts or people with specialist knowledge, and to get the best in an overall project. All of those things you can use to your advantage to say, yeah, of course I can do this. And here's the evidence. I published this paper and that paper which showcase this.
It's really interesting to me that in both the outside the bubble webinars we've had so far, there's really been almost this kind of emotional awakening in all the speakers, where there was a real clear moment where people could identify, in many ways, if they were happy in that professional sense or not. And it's very similar to what Melita was speaking about. I have had so many conversations with people recently about this idea about, but what if you actually got one of these fellowships? And there was a real concern around a lot of people. It would be like, well, it would be, for some people, it would be great, but what happens after that fellowship? Do you have to go back to the same feeling again and whatnot? And the idea of you can't have feel like you can have a bad month or a bad 2 months because of that competition. So it's really interesting to hear about people prioritizing their well-being, which they should, But for so long, at least from my experience in academia, it hasn't sounded like that, that people were prioritizing what made them happy entirely. So it's really awesome to hear people identifying around what they want in life and what matches and what doesn't. The next question we've got coming up is tips and suggestions for finding the roles and the possible jobs out there for academics looking to transition into the non-traditional roles. So, how did you do it? I know, Cinque, you talked about it a bit before too, but any other lessons you can learn, you can share with us would be wonderful.
For me, during the job seeking process, I actually had a list of my own of what I wanted in a job. Like, is it, like I had things like, I want to make a difference in society, but I also don't want to be checking my emails when I'm like in my free time, and yeah, like a list of what I wanted, and I also wanted to utilize the skills that I learned from research and my PhD and things like that. So, and comparing them to the types of jobs that were out there, it kind of slowly sifted to particular types of jobs. And then I could, from there start applying and having a look to see what their process is. And also speaking to the contact person of jobs. Like, I know a lot of people don't reach out, but some of them are really keen and they're really helpful. It puts your name in their mind, first of all. And they also give you a bit of a background, and you can, you can say, like, look, I come from research. Do you have anybody who's done this job before from a similar background and things like that? And they can give you a really good idea of where you sit. If it's completely different, then you're like, maybe not, not this one, but at least you get a really, good understanding of where you could be standing.
Yeah, you can also get some ideas, because I did that for just about every job I applied for. Get some ideas on what biases they might already have towards or against people from an academic research background. Like some of the jobs that I'm looking at were like the Safer Care Victoria and different things like that. And, they were, oh no, it's pretty much always a clinician. I'm not even going to bother. Like, if they want someone who's got clinical skills and background to be able to talk about clinical guidelines, then I'm not going to force myself into that hole. You can learn a lot when you actually talk to the key contact.
I'm conscious that we're running out of time, but we've got a lot of good questions. So let's try and do quick fire questions and responses for these two. May not be both of you, or just jump in. We'll see what happens. So first one, do you think that roles outside of academia are overall more friendly to working from home / remotely?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Yes.
But I think at the moment,
really?
everywhere is probably more friendly to that, just because so much of the world and Australia is working from home. We've all been able to pivot.
Yep. Okay. When you're looking at other roles, were you seeking for opportunities that would still facilitate some level of research-related activities, being in a role where you get the opportunity to seek information, synthesize?
Possibly. Oh, sorry, you guys can go.
I was kind of open to anything, really. Yeah.
I was interested in things that aligned to my values or my interests. So mental health, justice, policy. I don't have a big policy background, but things that might be around improving the way that we're doing things, or improving equity, or those sorts of things. So it actually meant that there were a huge number of opportunities that fit that category for me when I was looking.
So could you have not done research?
Yep.
Wow, that's great.
Although the funny thing is, now that I am still doing research, there's now a sensitivity about, well, can we publish it? Even though we're in a government organisation, like, our primary role is to do the work. So and we don't get, there's not an incentive to publish. So that can be a tricky one.
Interesting. All right, one more quick fire from me. How was the application process? Did you need to tailor your CVs, resumes in a specific way to attract recruiters or sell yourself for jobs? Did you use any specific resources?
I did a little. I tailored all my CVs and cover letters to whatever job was I applied for. But Victoria Police actually doesn't, they have their own set of questions that you have to answer instead of submitting a cover letter. So I just, basically answered those questions. And they also like read the little hints that's on the job ad because they like the STAR approach. So, and I followed that. And that was really handy because afterwards I found out that the officers members, they don't read your application if you don't have if you don't follow a certain approach in how you write in a particular way. So read the little,
we should
read
be able
the
to
fine
follow
print.
criteria sheets.
yeah exactly.
But often we don't.
Yeah. And I was just
Sorry.
going to say, like, my CV is like, I don't know, 50 pages long or something. So definitely not submitting that to every job I was applying for. I was tailoring it back, adapting it. So I spent quite a bit of time for every single job application. But the odd thing is that the job I got was a cold call. I don't even know how the agency came across me. But so it's just the oddest way that I got the job that I got, because an agency contacted me and said, hey, NDIA's got this role. You want to go for it? I'm like, oh, it's pretty low. I guess why not? So I didn't tailor anything for that one. I just sent them my CV and didn't even do a cover letter. And that was the agency process, I guess, that they put me forward and said, we think this person's got the skills that you're after. And maybe because my boss was from an academic background, she could see it. And things moved quickly there. Yeah.
There's definitely a lot to be said from accessing recruiters, but I guess maybe we'll hold that over for now because we've got some questions. So I think it's my quick fire round. So from Isabella, in terms of processes, have you found your new type of outputs, reports, policy advice, procedures, etc., move quicker, or have you found similar time frame in industry government pipeline? So this is probably for Melita.
Yeah, a lot of them do move quicker. And we've had to do a lot of internal, I guess, upskilling or just education of people across the agency of what is a systematic review? Can we do it in 2 days? No. So you need to ask a question that's to scale of the time that we have available. And we feel quite uncomfortable if we're asked to represent a whole body of evidence with a very short time frame. So we always put in disclaimers and say, well, this is what we've been able to find in 2 days. Most of our work is of 2 roughly normal timeframes of what you would want to do a systematic review in. But yeah, the thing is, I think once you might do a project, we do a report, but then there's a whole lot of other communications that happens after that to tailor it to different audiences within the agency. So whether it's the executives or people on the front line or people in different parts of the agency. So you've got to really know, how do I communicate to the specific audience at a specific time? Yeah.
Awesome. All right, Cinque, how much of your skills from your PhD academia were you able to use in these new roles, and how much did you have to learn on the job? Was it a steep learning curve?
It was in terms of the content. So I didn't know a lot of the law enforcement terms in the law. So I have to, look up the Crimes Act, like what's this offence? How is it different to that offence? That being said, though, similar to what Melita said before about stakeholder engagement, written and, oral communication skills and all that kind of stuff came really naturally. So I didn't have to worry about, I have to, call someone, or I have to make an intel brief and I don't know how to write, all those skills kind of just wouldn't have slowed me down because, you write so much in academia. So just learning the specifics of, the programs that we use, databases, but they all kind of, you realize that they run very similarly. So you kind of pick that up pretty quickly as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, Melita from Scott, what are some of the exciting brain science research projects you're involved with?
So I'm not doing so much directly in brain science anymore. The main project that I'm still finishing off is a trial for people at risk of PTSD and pain after a serious injury. So that, I think, was actually probably one of the best projects I ever did in my academic career. And I'm really excited that it's going to hopefully lead somewhere really good. But that's quite different to, I guess, the traditional brain sciences work, but a really pragmatic population health approach to better delivery time, timely delivery of care after injury.
Awesome. All right. So do the industries you work for have portable long service leave, and do you find that most people remain within the same overall industry between roles?
I don't even have annual leave, so.
But you did kind of answer it before with the fact that people jump between government contracts. Yeah,
I think within state government, if you move across different, you could probably answer this more directly, Cinque, but if you move between departments, then it follows you, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, last one. So Melita, you mentioned PhD student supervision as part of your role in academia. Are there also opportunities for people with research fellowships to teach, lecture, tutor into certain courses? And what might this balance look like?
So is that meaning?
T&R. Teaching and research roles, I'm assuming.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, the closest I guess I can come to answering that, I think, is about being in quite a research, essentially a research institute within a government agency. We do consider how can we get the best out of like our networks with universities as well, and can we actually maybe have internships from students or different things happening where we're partnering up with universities. We're not really doing we don't really do much of that, or any really of that teaching, unless we have a dual role, because there's no incentive for us as government employees to be doing that. It's not our core business. It's not our core role. That said, it's important for us to stay connected and to build networks and to be involved with other academic researchers. And that's, I think, something that's exciting in my new position, that actually we want to partner up with researchers in universities. We want to be involved with what's going on in the sector. So that's something that is kind of building in my current position, which is only I've been in for a couple of weeks. But we don't do a lot of the hands-on teaching research work in the university sector.
I have a question that Bernie, Hannah and I have been thinking about. So it's easy for some of us to think that, the grass is always greener. What are some of the things you miss about academia? What are the best aspects of academia? And that could be as a PhD student, as a research fellow, as a teaching research academic, as a teaching and only academic. You don't have all of those perspectives, but you have a perspective that we might not have because you're outside of this bubble. Is the grass really that greener? What do you miss about academia?
I think I miss, because of the role that I have, it's always very, real-time monitoring and things like that. You're very on and off. I miss, having a research question or a data set that you can really kind of sink your teeth into and think about what it means. How does it apply to the previous literature? What does it mean for the field? All that kind of like really interesting topics is like, I really miss doing that, like thinking about things like that. And sometimes you do have the government employees who like, this is just a job. So they clock in and clock out, and you don't get to have similar discussions with them because they may not that they don't care, but they're like, it's beyond my pay grade. It doesn't matter to me. And that's how I really like to learn, through like people with, more knowledge than me. So not having that kind of like culture and environment. I miss that.
Yeah, I think the two things for me are probably going to be conferences, and just maybe even more the social element of conferences and the networking and seeing, the same people that you like to catch up with at the annual conference. That won't be something I'm necessarily going to be able to do as much. The other thing for me as a contractor is that we're expected to be work ready. So I'm lucky that our branch does really support, where possible, professional development and learning and that sort of thing. But at the same time, we're actually meant to have the skills already. So there's no obligation of my employer to go, oh, actually, yeah, you can do that course, which in academia, I could have got, yeah, I'm going to spend half a week doing a qualitative methods course. I'm going to spend, some time doing a systematic reviews course, or I want to learn how to use MATLAB, so I'm going to go to this course. So that is a difference that we don't, like, we really have to be a bit more strategic or careful about how we find professional development opportunities.
All right, I think we could probably keep chatting to you both for a lot longer, but we are just about at our full 1 hour, so we need to wrap up. So I would really like to thank both of you for giving us an hour of your time outside the bubble to come and speak with all of us who are, we really... At the Brain Science Network are thrilled with the response we're getting from this webinar, which really highlights people want to hear these stories. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us. So from the, big claps to you both. And I also want to touch on before we go that the Brain Science Network is going to keep doing these events, these webinars, hopefully every couple of months. And if you know a colleague, an ex-colleague who's gone outside the bubble and is doing something cool, please send us their information, because we'd love to reach out and get more people involved and have the opportunities for these conversations to keep going for us all. So thank you for everybody who came today, and for the people who asked questions, and for our speakers. And I think we're all done. I don't know how you end Zoom.